I think we can start.
Okay. Okay. Good morning or good evening to one and all present today virtually in the 18th webinar of Assam Artificial Intelligence Initiative on scopes of doctoral studies in the US in science and engineering by Professor Deep Medhi. I welcome you all on behalf of Team I to this event. I hope I'm audible. Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So before lending the mic to Professor Deep Medhi, I would like to brief about our speaker's bio before starting the session. Professor Deep Medhi is currently serving as Program Director in the Computer and Network Systems (CNS) division at the National Science Foundation (NSF), the premier funding agency of the US government that supports fundamental research and education in non-clinical science and engineering. He is on leave on Curators Distinguished Professor in the Department of Computer Science and Electrical Engineering at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, USA. He received B.Sc in Mathematics from Cotton College, Gauhati University, India, M.Sc in Mathematics from St. Stephen's College, University of Delhi, India, and his Ph.D. in Computer Sciences from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, USA. Prior to joining UMKC in 1989, he was a member of the technical staff at AT&T Bell Labs from 1987 to 1989, where he co-developed facility diverse routing, a feature that was developed at AT&T's nationwide dynamic routing network. He is an honorary professor in the Computer Science and Engineering Department at IIT Guwahati, Indian Institute of Technology-Guwahati. His research has been funded by DARPA and NSF. He has published over 190 peer-reviewed papers and he's co-author of 2 books. He's a fellow of IEEE, recognized by for his scientific contributions to optimization and the design of computer communication networks. So that is all about Professor Deep Medhi. So in this talk, we'll discuss the scopes for doctoral studies in the US in science and engineering. So Professor Deep Medhi, and of course, we'll give the time for question and answers at the end of the session. So I would request all of you to be patient and I hope you all love the talk. So Professor Deep Medhi, I would let you to take over.
Thank you very much, Shivani, for nice introduction. It's my pleasure to be with you today, and thank you to the initiative, AI initiative, Assam AI initiative, for their activities and for continuing to provide interactive online, webinar services to the broader community. So I am going to talk a few things about what, in terms of doctoral studies in science and engineering. And I purposefully have only a few slides, and because I want to leave more time for Q&A at the end. So that's sort of what my goal it is. And so, to just give you a little bit more perspective before I go into my slides, is that I came to the US to do a PhD in 1983, which is almost 40 years ago. Obviously, that was before the internet, and I didn't even the word even internet I didn't know. And then at that time to apply, I was in Delhi doing my master's. Fortunately, United States Information Services had an office in Delhi where you had all the printed catalogs of universities from all of the US universities. So I used to go there, flip through the catalog and look it up and say, what's the topical area? What is the professors there? And so who should I write to? And obviously we wrote paper letters to contact professors back then. So that was the process of trying to do, but it took a lot of time. So one important point is that although technology has made certain things do much better, the planning and preparation for applying for PhD is very important. I'm going to talk, when I say science and engineering, mostly I'll talk about non-clinical science. That means I won't talk about medical science on those areas, because their PhD process is very different, because of some of them, we do medical degrees as well. So, when I say science and engineering, I kind of focus from that perspective, non-clinical being left out. First, I want to start with a few terminologies commonly used in the US. Whenever we use the word school, it refers to a university or a college. We just call it a school. Then graduate studies, in a general term, it means both doctoral studies as well as master's program. And because of graduate studies, you will hear the term graduate school. And more commonly, we call it grad school. That's the general way to refer to it. That you won't see certain terms being used in the US. We don't use the word postgraduate at all. Research school, research scholar, university or uni. Uni is a very popular term for example, in England. So you don't see those terms used at all. I know, for example, in India, the term postgraduate is very commonly used for what it is, and for doctoral student, research scholar. So we don't say the word research scholar at all. We'll just say PhD student, like any undergraduate student or master student, like that. So keep those terminologies in mind. And so, because when you look at the documentation and information, sometimes it can get a little bit confusing, because graduate studies in many ways in India means undergraduate studies. So we don't want to get you confused because you're looking for information. So I think the short answer to the scope is that there's plenty of opportunities to actually do PhDs in the US. So you might think it is very limited, but there's actually plenty of opportunities. I'll get to more into that in a little bit, but also you can ask me at the end with the Q&A. But to be able to get to where you want to go, it requires a lot of planning and homework ahead of time. So because of a number of things I'll talk about in a minute. So first question is that where to apply to. Actually, you might be surprised that, everybody get stuck on the concept of ranking. First thing I would say that for doctoral studies, you want to kind of, basically not focus on ranking at all, because it matters who you end up doing PhD eventually much more than the ranking. And so I would say I put top to 200 institutions in US, but it's probably even more than that. You can do actually a very, very good PhD in your areas of study. So don't get stuck on, I got to do it only have to apply to the top 10 school like MIT or something, And there are multiple reasons for it. One of them is that I do not know how to quite easily explain this, but a very interesting part of American culture is that people like to be a faculty member at a place where they like to be. It's because of physical region, because of the size of the school and whatnot. They don't necessarily want to be always at the top 10 or top 20 universities. And that's why the amount of research you see in the US is very, very spread out. The second thing I want to point it out to is that I currently serve at National Science Foundation, and I see grant proposal submissions from universities all over the spectrum. You might think that somebody from a top 10 school will get funded. Not necessarily so. That doesn't mean they write a good proposal. And I'm telling you the truth. We look at the content of it, so we know how spread out the funding of the institution is in terms of the quality of the faculty they have. So do not forget that. And that's absolutely important when you are trying to do PhD study, because PhD study is more about who you're going to do who is going to be your advisor and whatnot, rather than, the department. It's not like master's or undergraduate when you are getting a broader perspective. Having said that, what I call is the approach to apply is the portfolio management approach. So it may be a terminology many of you don't hear. You hear that term mostly commonly in financial management, that when you buy shares or stock, you don't want to put all your money in one place. Like, don't put all your eggs in one basket idea, and instead what you do is that you do different type of companies and shares that you actually put it in your financial portfolio. So applying to school is also same way. When I say 200 top schools or 300, you pick it, you want to kind of spread it out. You want to say that I'm going to apply a couple of them in the top 25, couple of them in the top 50, couple of them in the top 100, couple of, like that. So you have about 10 to 15 schools you want to spread it. And that's where the time...
Sir,
yep.
Sir, sorry for the interruption. Sir, are you navigating the slides? Actually, it is in the first slide only.
It's, I am. It is not showing up.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Why is it not going at all? Let me stop sharing for a second.
Yes.
I can. Oh, I see another script. Why is it not doing it? I did. Okay. Oh, it's still not going, right?
I think you can stop. Yes, yeah, it's coming now.
I stopped it, but something I'm not doing right on my Mac. Let's see what's going on. It's still not moving, right? Okay.
No, I think, sir, without slideshow, I think you can.
I can click through it.
You can click maybe. That is better.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Maybe let's do that.
Yes. Yeah. You can click through.
Sorry about that. Okay. Sorry. I talked through this slide, and I was on this particular slide right now. Okay. So I was talking about portfolio management concept. What that means is that you don't want to apply, if you're going to apply, say, to 10 or 15 universities, schools, you don't want to say, I'm going to only apply to the first 25 top ranking school or whatever. Secondly, that ranking may very much differ from one department to another department in terms of the subjects. If you're something in a school which is very good in physics, might not necessarily be the best place for doing PhD in electrical engineering, for example. So you want to keep that in perspective. So you want to spread it out so that you can actually select, first 200 schools, spread it out how you want to do it so that your chance of hitting one of them that you like is actually much better. So I kind of was touching on that. When you go to science and engineering department in the US, what you'll find is that only a few departments have all the specialties you can think about. Other than that, because of the number of faculty that a department can hire, is that they actually focus on certain research areas rather than all of the areas. So a physics department, for example, may have astronomy, but another may not have astronomy almost at all. So if your focus is interested in studying astrophysics, you might look into that rather than just looking at a physics department because they are ranked higher. So keep that in mind. So because that's the specialty thing is, partly dictated by number of faculty a department can hire to be able to do it. So many departments, they have their strategy that they are going to be good or, good in certain areas, not in every areas, because they can't hire. So it's like basically trying to be more, well-known for that particular topical area. So keep that in mind. So the planning for PhD studies, again, I want to focus the PhD study is very individualized. So it matters who you actually end up you do PhD with rather than what school actually you do it. And so you meant, because it's something you are really interested in, that you want to do it. Now, having said that, even when I say this, I want to point that out, that you might think that, okay, I'm not sure about what exactly within, let's say, in physics I want to do PhD in. But, you have to do a little bit of cultivating yourself in terms of looking from what you have studied so far, what you like more, and try to have some focus in it. It may not necessarily be just one focus area. It could be couple of them. And then you start go to Google Scholar. Google Scholar, you can type in any number of keywords to see, what are the different type of works going on in that area. And you have heard something about it. Sometimes you read it in the newspaper or see something about it. And I'm again going to pick about something like astrophysics. And so maybe you're interested in black hole imaging, so based on those things and Google Scholar, you have to kind of do it and then try to identify who is doing what it is. And this actually takes a lot of work, planning and stuff like this. So keep that in mind. I'll come to that. The other thing I want to point out quickly is that the American universities work in the semester system. It's a fall semester, they will call it, which is like autumn in, like in UK. And so it typically starts in the third week of August. Spring semester starts in January. There is also a summer term, which is basically half in terms of time, about 2 months long. So when you're applying for a PhD program, so what you will find out is that most PhD program wants to start in the fall semester. So which is going to be in August, which means their application deadline, depending on the university, can be from the year before, November, December timeframe to March. So basically, your planning period, even there, is about 6 to 9 months just for applying it. Then you want to tag into that your homework that you need to do to identify where you want to apply, who you want to contact, the professors, and try to. So it can take you, if you think about that way, almost from the summer before. So very, very important to keep in mind is that if you are going to do PhD, you need to almost start year and a half to do that. So this is what I'm going to tell you, very interesting. And I'm going back to what I started at the beginning, that when I applied 40 years back, I did about year and a half planning, staying in Delhi at that time. That window has not actually changed. What has changed is the ability to have access to information, what you can find out through Google Scholar, what you can look into the web page of a department to get information about who it is there. That sort of information is much, much better. So which also means that you can do better planning in terms of where you apply to. Second thing is that when we applied 40 years back, maybe we applied to 3-4 schools. Nowadays, variety of reasons. Nowadays, you can apply to 10-15 schools very easily because all on online application, and then you can spread it up, as I said earlier in my talk, about where you want to actually do it. So the planning is very, very important in terms of that part. So let me switch to one very important thing about applying to PhD program, recommendation letter. It's actually more important than actually what you get in your grades and stuff like that. Many cases, they're going to look at that information more. This is where PhD application is so different than if you apply to a master's program in the US, because they want to be able to kind of see what you are, what the folks who wrote recommendation letter wrote about it. Many people wonder, or even I've been asked that, okay, does the people who write recommendation letter need to be well-known? The answer is no. What is more important is that what the person writes in the recommendation letter. So, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Hello? Okay,
Yes.
good.
Yes.
Okay, I got that note saying that mic was off. What I mean is that, remember, in the recommendation letter, as I said, it doesn't need to be well known. Usually it is going to be a teacher or professor in your college or wherever you are doing undergraduate or master's program. And then if the letter says something like, it is very common in India, the character is good. I always make a joke about it. So that doesn't help because it doesn't tell anything about the person's ability to do research. Second thing, many people write, oh, they did really well when my class got an A. Look, I can see that your transcript or mark script that you got an A from this professor. So that information I already have it. What is important, and I have had many discussions with professor in the in India about how to write recommendation letters. Very, seasoned professor, veteran professors, they said, oh, I didn't know those things matter. So what I want to point out is that they need to tell about something about yourself that's unique. So that can come from a class you were teaching, that your teacher is teaching, and the teacher asked a question and you gave a very interesting answer, or you ask a follow-up question because why is that? That's what they like to see. They like to see that how you thought, that's what needs to be communicated in the recommendation letter. Because PhD research is all about thinking, how you are good as a thinker in terms of what you're going to be able to do. And that's what they like to see. So if you're asking somebody to write a recommendation letter, be sure to please point this important thing out to them, saying that, say it is, whatever they want to do. It could be maybe during even a casual discussion, or it could be during a lab experiment. You did something differently. That's not going to show up in the transcript. That's the one that you want to make sure that it shows up in the recommendation letter. So the duration of the PhD program. So many places, almost all places in the US, you need 1 to 2 years of coursework, even if you came with a master's degree, and then it takes about 3 years of research after that. And so it takes about 5 years to do PhD in the science and engineering. It's very, very common. It seems like a long duration of time, but you have to remember a couple of things. One is that submitting a paper to a conference or a journal getting accepted takes time after you do the research. That's one thing. Second thing, many jobs, especially academic jobs, expects you to have a number of publications when you apply for a faculty position. I'll tell you a case of one of my own PhD student. He was done with his, he was really, really smart. He was done with his research almost in 3.5 years. It's unheard of. Really good. We submitted a paper, and paper that was on a very reputed journal. And he said that, Dr. Medhi, I'm done with my thing. I want to graduate. I said that you don't want to graduate now because your problem is that you don't have enough publication on your CV, and you want to go to take a faculty position. You are going to get lower down your ranking when they are going to consider you for a position. So I said that you stay with me 1 more year and start doing your next phase of research that you want to probably continue to do as a faculty member later on. And so that may not be part of your PhD dissertation. That's not the point. But if we can get a couple of more papers published in the next year, your resume is going to look so much better for a faculty position. And that's what he said, okay, I'll stick around. He actually then got a couple of more papers done. Not only that, one of the critical work from your doctoral dissertation got accepted to a very reputed journal. Believe it or not, just because the paper got accepted to in the next year when he was applying, extending by staying 1 more year, you won't believe how many universities just called me because, okay, we saw that he published in this paper, in this journal, we want to talk to him. And so he ended up getting in a top 50 computer science department faculty position. And that's, I won't tell you, he beat out somebody from a top 10 university in computer science to get the faculty position. And so you might think that publication is very important. So if you're going to go work in industry after your PhD, it may not matter as much, but it may still matter because some of them will say that how much how many publications you have and all of this thing, and that's what it is. So this is where things change. So when I finished PhD, it took me 4 years to from starting at Wisconsin to finish it. A lot of people say, wow, it's impressive that you did it 4 years. That's 40 years back. Nobody cared about how many papers I published at that time to get a position, So, but the world has changed in the last 40 years. So it staying longer doesn't necessarily mean that it is actually a bad thing. It is, you might think, oh, why is this guy taking it? Many people don't understand why that's very, very important. Secondly, remember some of them areas you might actually do internship, especially in technical areas in engineering or computer science during that time. So you might be doing a summer term internship or a one full semester internship. That also extends your PhD program, but those experiences are also going to matter a lot when you apply for faculty position. So I'll give you one more example before I finishing it off in a couple of slides. One of my friend's sons, Assamese person who did PhD from Stanford, actually, he took a lot longer to finish his PhD than, his parents were a little bit worried that why is he not finishing? And the reason was that he wanted to have more publications. And he ended up getting a faculty position in top 5 computer science department in the US. So he started last year, for example. So keep that in mind. So you want to think about the time commitment that I really want to do that because you're really interested in pursuing an academic career, for example. Then I have 1 or 2 more slides here. The funding. Most students are supported in the US through a graduate research assistantship or graduate teaching assistantship. Those GRAs, research assistantships, are actually supported by your advisor through his or her grant funds. So this is where it is completely different from something like India or Europe or UK, where the PhD students are funded by government fellowship directly. Those are called research scholars and stuff like that. Here in the US, it is completely tied up. So these were more tied up to so this is also where it is important that you contact professors early on when you are looking to apply to be able to find out, do they have assistantship to be able to support you, and does it fit into your research interests and whatnot. And that's where the planning to apply for PhDs takes, very, very critical, takes time. You need to do the homework for that. I want to point out one thing here, that you may write to a professor in the US, they may not respond to you. You should not take that as a negative. You won't believe how many emails I get per day. It's probably 300 or so per day. It's very easy to forget, although I don't have no intent of actually not replying you to. If I don't remember your name from an email from 3-4 days back, I don't even know what exactly I'm going to search in my mailbox to be able to actually find it. Many people don't say clearly what it is, and I may not remember the name. So I usually used to put it on my webpage saying that if you don't hear from me in 2 to 3 weeks, please send me another email. And many professors are perfectly okay with it. If you send in about, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks, that I send an email, you might have been very busy. Would you, do you have any interest? I would say, most cases, if I get a second email, I said, oh yeah, I forgot to respond to that one. I try to respond it right away, whether I'm interested or I have funding or not. You'll get an answer to that one. So, a little bit of persistence is very, very important when you are trying to apply to see if you got a response back. And then, if you don't, the person is not interested, your area or doesn't respond after your second attempt, you can move on. You can move on to apply to the other one. This is also where a bit of parallel processing is important. You don't want to say, oh, I'm going to only apply to this, write to this and wait for 2 weeks before I write to somebody else. go ahead and write to 10, 15 people at the same time. You do the homework and then see how many respond, and then you follow up and whatnot. So the funding is that the relation with the advisor and the student is very, very critical there because of the funding. And that's where that what I said earlier from National Science Foundation, when we fund it, the funding goes to all of these faculty in top 200, 300 universities in the country. You will be surprised to know that. But that's the funding we give to from NSF. That's what they use it to hire graduate students for doing doctoral studies. So during the PhD process, a couple of things you will face is that you will have qualifying exam, then comprehensive exam, you have to do research proposal. All of these things are part of the process, and then that you'll get to know when you get there, and that may vary from one department to another, one subject to another one. So the American the autonomy of a department in the U.S. is unbelievable how they set up the policy. Within the same university, my department may require PhD, a very different requirement than other one. And this is because they don't do as much of a centralized control. They have some minimal requirements saying that you have to do this many hours of coursework. Beyond that, it's totally up to you because you are the expert in your field. You decide what is the best amount of work necessary to prepare a student to be a PhD, to get a PhD. Finally, I want to point out is that I always look at the PhD as a more of a training about doing research than actually doing the dissertation. Keep that in mind. That's very, very important. So with that, I'm going to stop it here so that I can now allow time for Q&A. So I think I'll stop sharing my screen as well. That might be helpful here.
Thank you so much, sir. I think everybody here present here virtually is benefited by your talk today. So I would like to open the mic for Q&As. Okay, so we have a couple of questions here in the YouTube live. So first question is from Hidayat Radha. So when applying for PhD positions, can we take recommendation letters from both academicians and industry professionals? Could you please elaborate on how industry professionals can recommend someone?
Very, very, very good question. Yes, you can. I would usually say that two things I want to say. Usually you want to, let's say an institution requires 3 recommendation letters minimum. You want to make sure that at least 2 of them from academic, 1 from industry. That's the first thing. Sometimes it may not be easy to work it out. That's slightly different. Second thing, if you get from the industry, because you did some industrial experience because you worked or did an internship as an undergraduate student, that if the person in industry has 2 things, has a PhD, it is helpful because they have went through a doctoral training. Second thing, even if they are not PhD, but they have say 20 years or 15, 20 years of experience, that also helpful because the experience matters. So I would first say that try to avoid a letter from somebody in industry who has been there only 2-3 years, been there. So rather try to get somebody from industry who is, has experience. It'll be matter more that your teacher has only 3 years of experience than somebody in industry who has 3 years of experience, work experience rather, to be able to write a recommendation letter. Second thing is that if, remember what I said about recommendation letter. If the person from industry can say that we have this project, in this project, this is how this particular person actually came up with a interesting way to look at the problem or did the analysis of the data or whatever it is, that's what is going to matter. So also keep that in mind. Very good question.
Thanks for the clarification.
Okay, so thank you, sir. The second question is from Shishir Kalita. Is there any funding opportunities for Indian students from NSF?
Very good NSF doesn't do, so NSF, let me step back. National Science Foundation has a graduate fellowship possible that's only available to American students or permanent resident in the US, not for international students anywhere. So so that's only one you can apply to. And that one is extremely competitive, it is, so for any international student or Indian in particular for that matter, the only opportunity is that getting a graduate research assistantship, which is the NSF has funded to the university faculty already, rather than NSF directly doing a fellowship. Remember, I said that we don't have a research scholar program in the US basically, and the graduate fellowship that NSF has probably not even fund 1 to 2% of the PhD student in the US. So it's like it's a very minimal thing. It's through NSF or other Department of Energy funding, for example, in physics. That's what funds PhD students in the US, but through the faculty who got the grant from those funding agencies.
Okay, thank you, sir. Dishu Dada, is that okay, or do you want to add something to it?
Yeah, it is. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Next question is from Rustam Bhesania. MS plus PhD programs are better, or we can directly apply for PhD after BTech? Which one is better?
It's a very good question. Especially in engineering and computer science, it's fairly common to apply after BTech. So you don't have to have a master's degree, because US most places require you to have 4 years of undergraduate degree to be able to apply to PhD program. And so where it might matter is that if you were able to show that you have some ability to do research or some experience doing research, maybe in the final year of your BTech program, we work with a professor, did the project work, you did the thing. If you can show that you did that work, that's going to be important when you apply, because that also, you can write it that this is the experience I have in terms of applying. Maybe you did some presentation in a small conference because of that experience. Those things can help. Second thing I want to point out is that if you're really interested in a PhD program, you apply for the PhD program. You don't have to do MS plus PhD program. That's, in fact, many departments, they expect you to directly apply to the PhD program. And so just keep that in mind. One other thing I want to point out is this is where something to differentiate between engineering, computer science versus physical sciences area, because most institutions, or I guess most degree programs in the India, is a 3-year degree program. So it is not a 4-year. So what that means that if you, let's say, if you're want to do PhD in physics, you cannot apply to a PhD program in the US after 3 years of undergraduate. You need to have at least 1 more year of education before being qualified for applying to. So, which basically ends up meaning that you have to do a master's program in India before you can apply to a PhD program in the US. Some US universities don't care whether you finish a 2 years master's program. You can even apply after 1 year of master's program. You can actually show it. So it's up to you how you plan it out in terms of applying to PhD program. But for your own interest, you may still want to complete the master's program because you started 1 year already in India. So you can do that. But I have known people who have left after 1 year to go to PhD program in the US.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Next question from the same person, Rustam. So if we have industry research in mind, is doing a PhD better than working in industry for the same amount of time?
It's a very good question. I always say the PhD is real about your own personal interests. I used to have a note on my page saying that, not something because you do it because you're interested in it, because you are interested in understanding something about research in a way, irrespective of whether you want to become an academic faculty after your PhD or you are going to go to industry. So that's where I will leave it. It's a very, very personal decision in that sense, in my mind. I know people who have done only masters in their life, and they're phenomenal researchers. They went to industry, they continued because they stayed with more on the R&D side of the thing. They got lucky. They have done incredible amount of work. So it's like I'll give a very different example or analogy here. So think about being a musician. You can go get a music degree, right? Or you can become a musician without doing a music degree. Like, you can be a fantastic pianist. You don't have to take a piano training or go to school, right? Some fields, especially in computer science related fields, computer science is artistic in that sense, I always say, because you could be a phenomenal programmer. You don't need educational background like a pianist, So it's so individualist in that sense that you just have to think about what really you want to get out of the training, the formal training. What is it going to help you? Whether you want to invest the time, 5 years for doing PhD for where you want to go there. In many cases, sometimes if you're not sure, you can always go work in industry a couple of years and then, apply for a PhD program. And that's not uncommon. I have seen people do that. One of my students who did masters with me, he was from India also 30 years back. He did 1 year of work. He said he wanted to go do PhD. So he went to a different university to do PhD. And I wrote a letter of recommendation from him because he did research as a master student with me. And so that's also possible. Where it is sometimes challenging in our field is that nowadays with a master's degree, they pay you so well that you have to make a decision, is that are you going to take a quote unquote less money as a graduate student, as a research assistant, compared to what you are making, the comfort you have. But that's a personal choice, that I cannot make that for anyone, for that matter.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. So next question
Shivani, just one thing.
Yes.
Maybe you can take my question later. Maybe you can take others' question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Next question is from Orchid Chetia Fukan. Do we specifically need GRE for PhD in USA?
Very good question. Okay, I forgot to address about GRE. GRE was required until the pandemic started. So with the pandemic, many institutions are kind of questioning the GRE, partly because it was difficult to take it and everything. So it's I'll call it in a limbo right now, depending on one department to another department. Even in the same university, 2 different departments. One may require GRE, another may not require GRE. So you just have to look at it, that and take the GRE. I would recommend you take the GRE, try to do as well as you can, but not worry about the score as much. I would again re-emphasize that recommendation letter is the most important thing for PhD studies. So, if you get really, really good recommendation letter, even your, grades don't matter. I even say in my 30 some years of academic experience, and if I look at who are good researchers, they are not necessarily the ones who got always the highest marks in my class, honestly, because some people are very good at studies, but they're not good at research. So we as an academic, we know that from a kind of anecdotal experience that who could be a better researcher. So we just look at is the person is self-motivated? Is the person interested in research? Can they persevere? Are the person going to stay for 5 years, want to make the time commitment? Those are the factors are what actually looked at more than the your grade that you got 99% in math or something like that. As somebody with 85% in math, even Einstein was not very good at counting, for that matter. He could have probably failed GRE math for all I know. So with doctoral studies is very different that way. So I mean, we professors know, we don't officially say it. I'm just telling you, but don't get too stuck with the I'm just telling you from my experience. One of my best students, even my course, he took it as a first year of grad course. He got a B. He became a phenomenal researcher. I mean, I stuck with him because I think he was struggling with learning English and everything. That's probably partly why he didn't do it well. So it's a PhD is a very different animal than anything undergraduate studies or master studies. So so don't be disheartened because you have a not a higher grade or something to start with to apply for PhD program.
Thank you, sir. Orchid, if you are there, is it anything to add or is it okay? I think Orchid is not here in the mid. Okay. So next question is Binong Kiribe. What is the average cost pursuing for PhD in US? What about scholarships?
Very good. Okay, so the average cost, the answer is I do not know. Because almost all cases, PhD students are supported. Otherwise, we don't, for example, we don't even admit if we cannot support a PhD in my department. We cannot support a PhD student. So we're selective, obviously, but we get a PhD student only if we have either a graduate teaching assistantship or one of the faculty who's interested in the student has a graduate research assistantship to fund it. And almost all cases, the amount of money you get is sufficient to your day-to-day living thing, and the assistantship, most cases, cover most of your tuition fees as well. So it is almost, funded in that sense. You may need to plan for some initial expense when you are coming, few $1,000s, but I would not go to a PhD program if they don't give you a assistantship to start with. That will be very, very difficult. But that also, made you wonder if that person is, really is committed to that, having you as a PhD student. So basically, I don't know. I mean, of course, today's days, I brought only a few $100s with me when I came. I got assistantship. I didn't pay anything. It covered all my expenses. I ended up buying a car after 1 year. Paid for that as well. Getting the car fixed also paid for it. So I think the expenses are tuition is more expensive now. Health insurance is expensive, but it is manageable with the amount of money you get it an assistantship. So, it's not going to make you rich or anything, but it's going to be enough to be able to support without having to take a loan. And that's also where PhDs are different than trying to doing a master's program.
Thank you, sir. So next question is from Bharat Kolanur. How to approach professors before applying to PhD programs, and what should we discuss with them?
Very good question. So how to approach is basically start with Google search. I said Google Scholar. You can then search the department, find the email address of the person topically interested. You may sometimes, if you're not sure about a topical area, you may go to a department. Let's say I'll pick a chemistry, for example, and then look at the name and write an email. When you write an email, do not write a long email. Write a very short email. Said, I'm interested in this. None of us, I'm sorry to say it, we get too many emails, right? 300 emails per day. So you want to be very succinct. Write something. You can always attach something. You can attach that my resume is here. I have more details on it, but say that I'm very interested in what you are doing. I read this paper you have. This is what I really like. Do we have an opportunity? I'm very interested in doing PhD. do you have any opportunity for research assistantship, graduate assistantship to, that I can apply, you'll be able to consider me. Please see my attached resume for detail in terms of my grades and all those stuff. That's it. Don't write a very long email. And the last line you said, something about it. And I'm trying to parse through this long email to find exactly what is the key thing in that thing, that's not helpful. So just said it, I'm interested in this particular thing you have discussed in this particular paper I read. I find it very intriguing, and you don't have to explain a lot that what you found intriguing, but I found interesting. Do you have an opportunity in this area or that to be able to do PhD? So you want to make the email very short, write it. And as I said earlier, if you don't hear back in about 3 weeks, please rewrite to the person saying that I sent it, you might have been busy. Be polite, so might be busy that do you still have interest, or would you please take a look at it? If after the second email the person doesn't respond, maybe the person is not interested or may not have funding, don't want to tell you at that point, so you can move on, write to other people, so. Yeah, so we call it cold email. Cold emails are okay. I get it all the time. I used to save email of the PhD student I hired and give it to them when they graduate. I said, okay, this is the email you sent me to 6 years ago. Look at this, what you wrote to me. And so some of them will laugh at it and look at and said, oh, I can't believe that's what I wrote. I would not write that email that way. I said, yeah, that's okay. So it's fine.
Thank you so much, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next question is from Nupur Chaudhary. What is the proper way to search for PhD programs and regarding the fundings?
Yeah, this is a very, very good question. Is that I will give an example with my nephew who came from doing his master in chemistry, actually, in master's. He did it in Gauhati University. He also studied in Cotton College. He never studied outside Assam for that matter. He went to a PhD program in US. So what he and I did is that he's in chemistry. I know nothing about chemistry. Honestly, I barely passed my higher secondary chemistry, to be honest with you. And so I said that you make a list of 100 university department first, chemistry department, and say, what are you interested in? He said, I'm interested in inorganic chemistry. I said, okay, out of this 100, how many have inorganic chemistry as a focus area? He said, not as many. I said, okay, let's down to those 50 universities. Then I said, okay, can you find anybody that you can actually identify it? So he did a Google Doc, I did a Google Doc, we just shared it. And then I keep asking him a couple of questions like that. And I said, okay, this looks like they have something interesting as a professor, I find it. And so he applied to about 10, 15. He got assistantship from about 4 universities. And then he decided to go to one of them. And he did PhD, now finishing his postdoc right now. He did postdoc, actually, chemistry postdoc is very important. I also said, by the way, I did not say it. Physical sciences area postdoc is very, very important. So you want to hopefully get to a bigger university for postdoc rather than a PhD, because you can get a postdoc opportunity. In his case, he ended up going to Cornell for postdoc, and he's starting as a faculty member at a US university this fall. I'm just giving an example. My nephew, applying from Assam, he didn't even study it outside Assam, but I made the point, you have to do a little bit of homework. I don't know anything about chemistry. You sort it down, we discuss, and what did you find it? And I also made the point about recommendation letter. Tell your professors, these are the things you have to write it. Oh, by the way, one other thing is I forgot to cover is your statement of purpose, SOP. It's also very, very important. With him, when he drafted it, we probably went through about 5 rounds. Because I said that you have to write your story. I don't know yours. I know you, but I don't. You have to write your story. And he said that you just, I'm good at this. I said, no, this is not going to cut it. Go back and rework it. And I'll tell you what he ended up writing. So he had a little bit of a health issue. And so because of that, he was outside, he was in Delhi for an operation, and then he had to go back to Gauhati. So what he said is that because of he was away, he could not do his chemistry lab experiments with his partners, or 2 or 3 partners. And he said that he realized that he was slacking off when he was doing it with 2 or 3 partners because he's dependent on others to do it. Now he was gone, so he was behind. He had to do everything by himself. And he wrote about that as his experience, saying that I had to do it myself one at a time, this experience. And what I learned from doing this experience about doing how to do experiment in chemistry and to kind of think about research problem. That's what he wrote in his letter. I said, I would not have known about that for him to write it. He wrote it eventually, and I think that helped. So, you got to write your experience in that way. That really matters rather than saying, I got an A in, 99% in math or chemistry. That I can see in the transcript. I don't need that in your statement of purpose. Tell about, what you got intrigued about a certain thing in your research area that you're interested. You may not be still sure about the research focus area, but you can say, hey, I like this. I wanted to believe that, there might be something I can actually find it. And I was studying this at my undergraduate or master's, but I really got intrigued and trying to look at that. And so this is why I'm interested. So your statement of purpose is very important. So I forgot to mention about that, but I'm glad it came up. So sorry, it was a longer answer than probably you wanted, but so anyway.
Thank you, sir. But I would like to add to that question actually,
okay.
Regarding the statement of purpose. So is there any limit of words in the statement of purpose, or like we can't write obviously pages and pages of recipe, right? Yeah.
Statement of purpose, there's no limit on the words. I would suggest that it is not longer than a page. You try to stay it in one page. Remember, the admissions committee have to write a lot of these things. So it's better to be very succinct, especially science and engineering areas. Remember, we are very focused people in a sense, technical way. We only want to look at the information we're not like humanities. Humanities may expect a 3-page write-up about, poli-sci or something. It's very different. So, and use very simple language. They don't expect you to write a fancy, flowery words in it. Write in simple language, communicate it. This is why I'm interested in. This is what it is. Recently, I helped with one student from he did Doctoral University undergraduate to go to the PhD program. He got admitted starting in fall. He wanted my help with the statement of purpose, and I kind of looked at it and I said, no, this is not quite cutting it. I'll tell you why it is not cutting it. This is your story, but you have to write it. What you want. You cannot say, I studied this. That's not sufficient. It doesn't tell me anything. What you need to say that what did you get out of studying that particular topic? That's what is going to matter. So focus on that in your statement of purpose, other than giving a list of I studied this. Look, I can see that in your transcript. You studied it, all the subjects that's required for your undergraduate program. So that is not helpful. Tell me something I cannot find in your transcript. That's what is very important. This, statement of purpose.
That was very informative, sir. Thank you so much. Next question is from Sanjukta Barua. How difficult is it to get the teaching or research assistantship for a master's student?
Master's student is extremely difficult. I'll tell you the simple reason what sort of I covered it, because when a professor gets a grant from National Science Foundation or Department of Energy or Department of Defense, they are intending to use that money only for PhD students because they have to support their own research. This is not for master students. So for master students, it's extremely difficult. If you may sometimes you get lucky, that's what you get it. Secondly, as an incoming master student, you may not get it, but you take a a course from a professor, they like you, they have some money left, they may hire you in the second year. So you may get lucky that way, but not at the beginning. So.
Thank you, sir. I think that's all from the YouTube chat box. Now we come to we also circulated forms, sir, regarding the questionnaire. So there are some questions that they have posted in the forms also. So first question is from Suman Boro. He is from Dibrugarh University, Assam. So he has 3 questions. What are the scopes in my area of interest for PhD in UK universities? Sir, I would like you to know that his research area is in experimental condensed matter physics.
Okay.
So yeah, so what he asked is, what are the scopes in my area of interest for PhD in UK universities? Second question is, how one can select for that selection procedure? And third is, what is the criteria for getting scholarship during PhD school or PhD work there?
Okay. I don't know about UK, but you know how it is on condensed matter physics. I'm pretty sure there's quite a bit of opportunity to do PhD there. This is also where what I said earlier. Remember, physics department, not every department have a expertise in condensed matter physics, for example, but some departments have it. So you have to do, again, start with your list of about 200 physics department, go to their initial webpage, because they will usually say these are the high-level thing. They will tell you, I would have a expertise in condensed matter physics or astrophysics or whatever. They will tell you this is what it is. So you can actually then look at and almost eliminate maybe 50 to 100 up in the very first try out of those 200. But you still want to start with the 200 departments, because you don't want to rule out somebody who's an expert you haven't heard about in an institution who has a funding. So remember, funding matters. So that second level of thing you have to do is that once you identify those departments, you go then look at the professor. See, what do they say in their webpage? Remember what I said, I'm going to reiterate. Planning and time matters for applying for PhD. So you want to look at that professor's information, see if that person have any grant, and then you can actually write to that professor. If he doesn't have grant, the chances might be a little bit less. That doesn't mean you cannot rule it out, because some department may bring you as a graduate teaching assistant, where you help with labs and whatnot and physics lab. And so, but you have to do that. So I think the opportunity is there. It's a question of doing the work to be able to identify a set of university. I gave the example of my nephew who got assistancy for 4 or 5 universities, Then he had a choice. But because he did all this thing, portfolio management, not sticking with I told him, don't apply only to the top 30 or 40 universities. You'll be disappointed and you'll lose a 1 year in the process. It's not going to help you. So you have to be open in terms of that. And then once you get the, assistantship from multiple places, you can decide which one fits best. You can still have a follow-up email with the professors after you get the assistantship to decide on it.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Babli Khatun from Tezpur University. Academic or jobs for people studying interdisciplinary subjects like me. She did her B.Sc chemistry, M.Sc nanoscience, Ph.D in polymeric drug delivery.
Wow. Okay. Okay, so this is a very good question. This is also where your homework is going to take a little bit longer, because polymeric science, it may be in the material science department in the US, it could be in the physics department, it could be in electrical engineering. So it can spread, or maybe even biomedical engineering for that matter. It may spread multiple departments. So because of the way it is being done in different departments and universities for that matter. And so because of that, your amount of homework to identify is going to take a little bit longer, because you're going to need to, now you're not focused on astrophysics as an example, right? So where that I'm only going to go to physics department. So you are going to have to look at 2 to 3 different departments to find out what it is and to be able to find the right balance for what you're interested in. I would say you might start first with a material science department or material engineering department before, that might be the right place. But it can go to chemical engineering, biomedical, it makes it a little bit different. And that's also where I would suggest that because of a specific thing you're interested in, that particular topic, you want to go to Google Scholar, do a little bit of search of what type of papers are there, and where, once you identify those people from those papers, what department they are in, that may help you to maybe narrow it down a little bit what departments you want to apply to.
Thank you, sir. So I would like to ask you, is it okay, if we extend for 10 minutes, because there are a couple of questions.
It's okay. Yeah, I can do another 10 minutes. Okay. All right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. Okay, so next question is Anushmita Ghosh from Anushmita Ghosh. She's from University of Kalyani, West Bengal. She says that she wants to join you, and she is eager to do PhD under your supervision.
I'm not the best person to do PhD. You can write to me. Please write to me, and we can go from there.
So could you please tell how she could do that?
No, just write to me. So send me an email. So we'll go from there. So
I think she'll do excellent under your supervision. So.
Oh, I don't know. I try. Okay, so.
Yeah. So I think next question is Pinong Kiri. I think he has already given the question in the YouTube chat box. Okay, so now coming back to my question, actually, sir. So I wanted to ask: are all the universities in the US open to both fall semester and spring semester, or there are some universities who are open to applicants in the fall semester, and there are some universities who are only open to the spring semester?
Very, very good question. For PhD programs, most universities want you to start in the fall semester. Now, having said that, some may allow you to start in the spring semester in January, but I would say most of them want you to start in the fall semester, almost all of them, So, yeah, almost. Some may do it or allow you to defer it for some reason if you're delayed or whatever. Because the funding cycles typically in the US always works on the academic year, which starts in the fall semester. That's also why they already allocate the money, so there may not be any available in the spring. And there could be rare cases a professor has a new funding got in November, new grant he got, and he or she wants to use it up to get a higher student in starting immediately in January. That would be a kind of a one case by case basis rather than being a general rule.
Thank you, sir. Again, I have a question. I am doing my master's in semantic web, sir, under Dr. Abhishek Srivastava. So when I search for
master's
professors,
in what? What did you do master's in?
I'm doing master's in semantic web.
Semantic web, right?
Yes,
that's right. Yep, that's what you told me earlier. Correct.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So when I search for professors doing who are researching in this area, I get a very few of them, actually. This is a very novel approach, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And people are still researching over this topic.
Yeah.
So so I get a very few professors in this area.
Okay.
So what would you suggest in this thing? Like, should I change change my area of interest in PhD, or what to do, sir?
No. I think there's. I'll give you another clue for it. Many people may not list that as a. That's the other slight problem sometimes. Many faculty they didn't. Get busy. We don't update our website, and we don't list it semantic web as the area I'm working on. So you have to kind of look at their list of publication. That's one thing, and I'll give you another very, very important source. If I can. Type it in the chat box here. Everybody can probably do it. So give me 1 second. So So let me go back to, here it is, chat it. So I posted the NSF award search database link, right?
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is where all the grants NSF has given to university faculty in the US. Type in their words like semantic web and see who actually got funded, because the proposal title may have it or abstract may have it. So you can do reverse engineer from there, right? So he said, okay, this person, what department it is there? And then he said, okay, I'm going to contact that person. So this is another very important. And by the way, you can use it for any areas of science and engineering, this award search data, because that information is, what you gave a grant is public.
Yes.
So the grant, you will, for example, when you do that, so I'm going to even, so if I do semantic web, you will find, maybe you may not immediately find just from the title of it, because it is trying to do certain thing, but I found one proposal here, I picked it up, and that was going to tell you who click on the link, that will have the abstract information, when it got funded, this person got funded in, I picked it up without naming the person, quite some time back, 2006 actually. It's one of the early researcher, right? So you can see the name of the person, you can see the name of the institution. That person is probably, even if that person may not have an award grant right now, maybe still doing some work on it. So this is your clue, right? So this is, I'm glad you asked that question. That helped me to remind you about this link to be a good source for, to narrow it down based on, things like that. So. Good.
Thank you so much, sir. That was very helpful to me. Thank you so much. I would request the team to post it in YouTube chat box also. Thank you, sir. And we have a couple of more questions actually in the YouTube chat box. Okay. So this is from our Partha Pratim Saha. In SOP, how to portray long industrial experience, or how to tell why now I am interested for PhD?
Is the question that this person already has long industrial experience? Can you repeat that question,
yes,
Shivani?
Sure. In SOP, how to portray long industrial experience, or how to tell why now I am interested in PhD?
Okay, so I think you can, let's say you have, I don't know what the definition of long is. Let's say I will pick the 5 years. You have 5 years of industrial experience as a long experience that you wanted to apply for a PhD. You can, remember, you are going to be probably adding your resume also with your application. That has a more detailed information about it. But you can say that I have 5 years of industrial experience, but hit on one or two key things in that 5 years you did it. Not give a laundry list of, I did this, doesn't help. Pick one or two, and this is what I really like doing, that intrigued my interest to do PhD in this direction. That's one thing. Second thing, you want to give a why you want to leave the industry job to go to a PhD program. You can say that maybe when you were finishing your earlier degree before you started the industry, you were not sure about PhD. But after working in industry, what you saw, things are very different, that you are really interested now in PhD. And these are and because I was not sure 5 years back, now I'm sure. I mean, this happens. Even I changed my direction of research even after PhD, right? So I'm an example. I didn't know that this even existed when I applied for PhD program. So, I mean, you can be honest about it. You said that I really didn't know 5 years, but people like honesty. That you are honest that I was not sure I was going to do PhD, but I work in industry. I found this interesting. Now I read my, things in, broader, reading material I have from newspapers or trade journals or whatever. I got really interested in that. That's why I'm more ready to be able to just be honest about it. Don't have to say something doesn't reflect you. So, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from the same person. He says, in continuation, there are many applications of similar SOP contents. How grad school committee finally pick up the final ones?
I mean, this is a secret algorithm. We cannot tell you. It's very, very difficult, but it's not one thing. Your SOP, your recommendation letter, all of this thing, and the formula is very, very. There's no one formula. Let me put it that way. It's not that I'm trying to hide it. It's a lot of factors matters, including your research interest. Somebody has a funding in the committee, in the department, and somebody who might have a better otherwise everything. There's nobody in the department interested because there's no funding in it. It's not the person is of not good caliber. We have turned people down because of that, because we just didn't have funding. We'd like to have you, but we don't have funding right now. So don't be disheartened. This is why my whole idea about portfolio management is important. You don't focus on only 2 or 3 places. Do 10 to 15 universities so that your probability of hitting one of them is, at least one of them is good, because you did the homework, you found professors have funding. Sometimes you can even write to the PhD student under PhD professor, say, hey, I know you're doing PhD with this person. Does this person have a funding next few years? Small information. This may help you where you want to apply to. So, yeah. So
I think we have come to the end of the questionnaire session, and I hope everybody is benefited with your answers and everybody's questions got answered. Thank you so much for your valuable time, sir. We, on behalf of I are very honored to have you today, sir. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for your questions, for your amazing questions.
Thank you for all the questions. Hope I was able to answer them to your satisfaction. And thank you to Shivani for doing a great job as an MC of this entire program today.
Thank you,
and
sir.
Good luck to all of you. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.